The morning light, pale as watered milk, filtered through the lace curtains of the master bedroom, painting soft patterns across the antique oak dresser. Amelia, her heart aflutter like a trapped bird, turned in the arms of her new husband Daniel. His warmth was a comforting anchor in her otherwise swirling thoughts. "My love," she whispered, her voice still thick with sleep and wonder. "I can hardly believe this day is real. Are we truly married?" A breathless joy bubbled within her, but it quickly gave way to a familiar ache. Her smile faltered, a shadow crossing her features. "There's just one thing that weighs on me, Daniel." He pulled her closer, his lips brushing her hair. "What is it, sweetheart?" I don't think your little Willow likes me much," she confessed, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. Daniel's arms tightened around her, a gentle reassurance. "Oh, Amelia, it's not that. She just needs time to get used to you. Remember, she's only 7 years old, and her world was turned upside down." "But it's been months now," Amelia countered, the frustration a quiet hum beneath her words. "And she still keeps her distance. I see how she gravitates to Sarah. It's clear she feels more comfortable with her nanny." "Please, darling, remember that she went through the unimaginable, losing her mother. Sarah was the only constant for her then, a steady hand when everything else crumbled." Amelia nodded, a heavy sigh escaping her. "I do understand, but it's as if I'm invisible to her. I feel like an outsider, Daniel, and you speak so highly of Sarah, praise her every move. Sometimes it feels like you don't even notice me, even though I love Willow so fiercely. She feels like my own, a precious gift. I truly believed I could be a mother figure to her, a gentle echo of what she'd lost." Daniel shifted, sitting up and cupping her face in his hands, his eyes earnest and kind. "My dearest, I see your heart truly, but Willow suffered a profound emotional shock. Right now, what she needs most is peace, kindness, and our unwavering care. Sarah is exceptional at her job, a true blessing as a nanny, but she will never, ever be closer to Willow than you could be. Give her a little more time." A wave of resentment, unexpected and sharp, washed over Amelia. "There it is, you see. You defend Willow, you defend Sarah, but my feelings seem to be an afterthought. If you just let Sarah go, your daughter would surely connect with me faster." Daniel's gaze softened, but his voice held a firm, almost weary patience. "Amelia, not now. Her child therapist, Dr. Albright, was very clear. We need to shield Willow from any unnecessary stress. I promise you, you will have all the time in the world to build that bond. She's still so young, a tender shoot, and one day—" He looked directly into her eyes, a hopeful flicker there. "Willow will call you Mum." "Oh, Daniel, how I long for that," Amelia whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "But I fear it won't happen as long as Sarah is in our home, a constant reminder of the past." "My love," Daniel began, his voice a gentle plea, "let's agree to put this discussion aside for now. Willow's well-being is paramount, far more important than any fleeting discomfort. Please, can we agree?" Amelia hesitated, the battle between her longing and her sense of fairness playing out behind her eyes. "All right, I agree," she conceded, though a thread of stubbornness remained, But promise me, Daniel, the moment Willow truly begins to speak again, the moment her voice comes back to her, will you let the nanny go? Give me your word." He looked at her, a silent moment passing between them. He clearly wrestled with her request, his brow furrowed with concern. "I don't believe that's the right path, Amelia, not for Willow's sake, but if it will truly give you peace, and if it's what you need to move forward, then yes, you have my word." A fragile smile touched Amelia's lips. "I love you, darling." Her eyes brightened suddenly. "Oh, by the way, you haven't forgotten that my mother, Nicole, arrives tomorrow, have you? Did you manage to pick up her welcome gift?" Daniel's eyes widened, a sheepish grin spreading across his face. "Amelia, my love, with all the wedding arrangements and settling into the new firm, it completely slipped my mind. You know your mother far better than I do. Why don't you take the convertible into town this afternoon and choose something lovely? I'll present it to her when she arrives." Daniel wrapped Amelia in a tender embrace, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. He retrieved his worn leather briefcase from the chaise longue and headed for the front door. Just then, Willow, dressed in a cosy emerald green coat and a matching knit cap, was making her way up the flagstone path after her morning walk. She spotted her father and paused on the porch, a tiny figure framed by the blossoming dogwood tree. "My sunshine," Daniel murmured, dropping to one knee before his daughter. "Were you out enjoying the crisp air? Did you like seeing the frost on the pumpkins?" Willow nodded, a slight movement of her head, but no words escaped her lips. "Would you like me to take you sledding this evening, down by hill?" Again a silent nod, her expression unreadable. At that moment, Sarah, Willow's nanny for the past 2 years, approached. She was a woman in her early 30s, with a calm demeanour and eyes that held endless patience. "Good morning, Mr. Callahan," she said, her voice warm and cheerful. "Good morning, Sarah. You haven't forgotten Willow's appointment with Dr. Albright today, have you?" "Oh, absolutely not, Mr. Callahan. I just spoke with Dr. Albright. We've confirmed for 2 o'clock. "These things should be coordinated with us," Amelia interjected, stepping out onto the porch, her tone firm, almost sharp. She'd been watching the exchange from the doorway, a knot of unease tightening in her stomach. Sarah turned, her pleasant expression faltering just a fraction. "My apologies, Mrs. Callahan. I assumed it would just be Willow and me going. I wasn't aware you wished to accompany us." "It's perfectly fine, Sarah," Daniel interceded smoothly, stepping between the two women. "Mrs. Callahan has plenty of preparations today. My mother-in-law, Nicole, arrives tomorrow, after all. After the appointment, perhaps you could assist Mrs. Callahan with the arrangements for her mother's visit?" He kissed Willow's soft hair one last time, a lingering, protective gesture, before climbing into his SUV. Amelia watched the car recede, then turned her gaze, cold and direct, to Sarah and Willow, before retreating back into the quiet elegance of the house. Her veiled animosity was often palpable to the household staff. When Daniel was home, she played the part of the devoted wife and the doting stepmother. But the moment his sleek SUV disappeared down the winding drive, her thinly disguised resentment towards her stepdaughter and the ever-present nanny would surface, a chilling undercurrent in the otherwise serene household. The serene facade of the Callahan home often cracked when Daniel was away. Amelia, fueled by a simmering resentment she rarely allowed herself to acknowledge in her husband's presence, could become a tempest. She'd snap, her voice sharp as a winter wind, or worse, her hands might impulsively push little Willow, leaving the child trembling. It was a secret she guarded fiercely, relying on Willow's silence, a silence born of trauma, not just childhood timidity, and Sarah's quiet loyalty. Sarah, the nanny, never breathed a word to Daniel, her fear of losing her position outweighed only by her deeper dread of leaving Willow vulnerable to such unkindness. She remembered Lily, Willow's true mother, a woman of astonishing grace and boundless affection. Lily had moved through the world with a light step and a heart overflowing with tenderness, especially for her daughter. But then a virulent illness had swept through Lily, stealing her vibrancy with a horrifying swiftness, leaving Daniel and Willow utterly bereft. Just under 2 years after the devastating loss, in a desperate attempt to fill the gaping hole of loneliness, and with the fervent hope that Amelia might somehow mend Willow's shattered spirit, Daniel had married her. Sarah had seen the subtle shift in Daniel's eyes, the incandescent joy that had once burned brightly when he looked at Lily was now a softer, more muted glow of quiet companionship with Amelia. Sarah's presence in the Callahan home was purely for Willow. She loved the little girl with a fierce protective devotion that Willow, in her quiet way, instinctively understood. Sarah also knew Daniel relied on her, and for Willow's sake she endured Amelia's unpredictable moods and thinly veiled animosity. The impending arrival of Nicole, Amelia's formidable mother, was always a landmark event in the household. Amelia practically worshipped her mother, indulging Nicole's every whim with an almost desperate eagerness. For Daniel and the entire household staff, Nicole's visits were an endurance test, a delicate dance around her exacting demands and biting critiques. Sarah bore the brunt of it. In Nicole's sharp, discerning eyes, Sarah was merely a lazy, uncultured country girl, utterly unfit to guide a child like Willow. The older woman, impeccably coiffed and with an air of self-importance, doled out criticisms and unsolicited advice to everyone, her voice cutting through the otherwise hushed atmosphere of the stately home. 3 days of Nicole's presence felt like a marathon of patience for everyone involved. The first day began with a flurry of grand greetings, carefully chosen gifts, and a cascade of flattering compliments. For a few blissful hours, a fragile sense of domestic harmony prevailed, but by late afternoon, Nicole had already begun to issue her directives, a precise commander outlining battle plans to her weary troops. To escape any further domestic skirmishes, Amelia tactfully retreated with her mother to the opulent master suite. "Mother, please, you have to rein it in," Amelia hissed, her voice low and urgent. "Are you trying to alienate me from Daniel and every single person working here?"
"It's not my fault your husband hired a collection of utterly useless loafers,"
Nicole sniffed dismissively, gesturing with a perfectly manicured hand.
"Honestly, with that cook, darling, you're bound to hit £200 by Christmas. And the gardener? A complete idler. He needs to clear the pathways more often. One can hardly walk without fear of a broken hip."
Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, brimming with disdain.
"And as for that nanny, Sarah, that's beyond anything I can tolerate."
Amelia offered a brittle, admiring smile. "Mother, I truly envy your talent. You've only been here for a few hours, and already everyone is terrified to make eye contact with you. If only you could help me get rid of Sarah, I'd give you the world." Nicole's eyes, sharp and calculating, narrowed slightly.
"And what troubles you, my dear? Has Daniel begun to look at her differently? I must admit, she is a rather comely girl."
"Mother, honestly, that's absurd," Amelia scoffed, a flicker of genuine shock in her eyes. Sarah is a grey mouse compared to me. No, my concern is her closeness with Willow. The child won't take a single step without her. Do you understand? Understand? Nicole raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. I don't. What's wrong with that? Fewer worries for you, my dear. Let her fuss over that difficult child. You have more important things to focus on. It's not that I care about her fussing, Amelia confessed, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It's Daniel. This Sarah has become a fixture in our family. They can't seem to manage without her. Nicole merely offered a knowing smile. Less you know, the better you sleep, my sweet. Trust me, I'll handle this little problem myself. The next morning a flurry of hurried activity filled the house before breakfast. Daniel, who had planned to work from his home office, received an urgent call from a legal partner, forcing a sudden change of plans. Sarah and Willow were scheduled for their regular session with Dr. Albright, but a sudden cough and sniffle meant Willow had to stay home, nestled warmly in her bed. To save time, Daniel opted not to drive himself, instead taking the sleek black sedan with his driver. With Daniel gone, Amelia, her feet propped elegantly on the velvet sofa, savoured the rich aroma of her coffee, a smug satisfaction softening her features. As noon approached, she began to dial Daniel's cell phone, but his calls went straight to voicemail. After several futile attempts, she called for Sarah, and, with an imperious wave of her hand, told her to ring the driver and find out Daniel's whereabouts. Sarah quickly called Ben, but the phone rang unanswered, time stretching into anxious minutes. Just as despair began to settle, one of her attempts connected. Amelia and Nicole, who had been lingering in the sunlit breakfast nook, watched her intently. Good afternoon. Ben, it's Sarah. Mrs. Callahan asked me to call you and see where you both are and when you'll be home.
Hello, this isn't Ben,
a gruff male voice responded. Oh, Sarah faltered, a cold dread beginning to seep into her bones. Who is this? I must have dialed the wrong number.
This is Captain Donovan Riley of the Grandview County Sheriff's Department,
the voice replied, firm and unyielding. Sarah's breath hitched. Is something wrong?
The car with Mr. Callahan and his driver went off the old bridge near Old Creek and into the water,
Captain Riley stated, his voice flat with professional detachment.
Sadly, the driver did not survive.
Oh, no, Sarah cried out, the phone nearly slipping from her trembling hand. Her gaze shot to Amelia, whose expression had frozen in a mask of alarm. And Mr. Callahan, Sarah whispered, the name a fragile plea, her voice slow, almost syllable by syllable, as she fought for composure. What about Mr. Daniel Callahan, the passenger? She held her breath, the silence on the line stretching until it felt unbearable.
The passenger has not yet been located,
the captain finally said, his voice grave.
Our search and rescue teams are still on site. I can't tell you anything more at this moment.
The line clicked. Dead.
What happened? Speak, Sarah, what happened?
Amelia shrieked, grabbing Sarah by the shoulder, her perfectly manicured nails digging in. At the sound of her stepmother's piercing scream, Willow, who had been silently making her way to the living room, paused in the doorway. Unnoticed by the two women, she stood like a small pale ghost. Ben is gone, Sarah sobbed, reeling with shock and grief. The car went off the bridge into the creek. And Daniel,
My husband, what about Daniel? Tell me! Amelia continued to scream, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. They haven't found him, Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face, her shoulders shaking uncontrollably. The tragic news, delivered in those few devastating words, seemed to echo in the hushed elegance of the room. Willow, who had stood frozen, her eyes wide with a dawning horror, suddenly turned and fled, a silent whirlwind of despair. Sarah, her heart aching for the child, stumbled after her, while Amelia's screams intensified, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the otherwise quiet home. No! No! Not this! Not him! Nicole, her own face pale with shock, tried to calm her distraught daughter, her hands trembling as she held Amelia. Just over an hour later, the phone rang again. It was Captain Riley. Daniel had been found. He was alive, but his condition was critical. For several agonizing days, doctors at St. Jude's Hospital fought valiantly for his life. From the severe injuries he sustained and the prolonged exposure to the freezing water, he had been teetering on the precipice of death. Daniel lay in the intensive care unit, suspended between worlds, unconscious. After 10 tortuous days, he finally emerged from the coma, a ghost of his former self. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, his condition stabilized, and he was moved to a regular room. Daniel remained in the hospital for over 2 months, undergoing multiple complex surgeries. Throughout this entire agonizing period, Amelia never once visited her husband. When the time for his discharge finally arrived, the attending physician shook his head sadly as he spoke to Amelia. Mrs. Callahan, your husband, he isn't expected to recover. The chances are less than 1 in 1,000. And even in the best-case scenario, he will remain in a vegetative state, unable to feel or comprehend anything. I am so very sorry. We've done everything we possibly could. It would be best for him to be at home, rather than in the sterile environment of a hospital. Daniel was brought home. During his prolonged absence and the initial chaos, all authority in the grand house had subtly shifted to Nicole. She wasted no time asserting her new power, systematically dismissing all the household staff, leaving only Sarah. Even Sarah was retained purely out of Nicole's disinterest in tending to Willow herself. The small, comfortable room that had once belonged to the housekeeper was now designated for Daniel, a stark, clinical space, prepared for his unseeing existence. Citing profound psychological exhaustion from the ordeal, Amelia departed for a lengthy retreat at a luxury seaside resort, leaving Daniel utterly alone. No one, save for Sarah, attended to his daily needs. None of his former friends or business associates ever visited. Those were bleak, desolate days. Refreshed and brimming with new, chillingly pragmatic ideas, Amelia finally returned home from her extensive vacation. The first thing she did was research specialized care facilities, a residential hospice for individuals with severe disabilities. With a chilling efficiency, she placed Daniel there to live out his final empty days. Willow, her delicate spirit already so fractured, was then sent to a private boarding school, a place more akin to an orphanage. And Sarah? Sarah was summarily dismissed, thrown out of the house with a torrent of scathing accusations and baseless fury. Amelia, at long last, stood as the sole unchallenged mistress of Daniel's vast fortune. Finally, Nicole beamed with pride at her successful daughter. Despite the crushing grief and despair,
Sarah eventually made her way back to her quiet village, her heart heavy but unbroken. There she confided in her own mother, Evangeline, a woman of deep faith and boundless compassion. Evangeline, listening to the heartbreaking tale of the family her daughter had served, readily agreed to Sarah's desperate plea to adopt little Willow. It took time, a seemingly endless labyrinth of paperwork, certifications and legal procedures. Yet with a quiet determination born of fierce love, Sarah ultimately succeeded in bringing Willow home from the private boarding school. Throughout this arduous process, Sarah made regular, clandestine visits to Daniel at the hospice. She shared every piece of news, every small victory, every whispered plan with him, talking to him as if he could truly understand. Sometimes she doubted he comprehended anything, his eyes vacant, his body still, but the patient young woman persisted, narrating every step of their journey. To the astonishment of his doctors, Daniel slowly but surely began to mend, a flicker of awareness returning to his eyes, a faint tremor of movement in his hand. A miracle in the making. The whisper of Sarah's news, that she had brought little Willow home from that cold, impersonal boarding school, ignited a powerful spark within Daniel. It was a fragile flame at first, deep within the dark confines of his consciousness, but it grew steadily. He pictured his daughter's small, sweet face, the way her hand used to fit perfectly in his, and a fierce, unyielding determination to return to her began to fuel his every breath. He started to train, not just with his physical therapist, but in every waking moment, pushing against the prison of his broken body. Gradually, haltingly, his voice began to return, a raspy echo of the man he once was. Sometimes his words were slurred, a jumble of sounds, but Sarah never wavered. She would listen with unwavering patience, praising every effort, her quiet encouragement a lifeline to his spirit. This unwavering support was the sustenance he desperately needed, giving him the strength to fight. Meanwhile, in Sarah's cosy village cottage, Evangeline had become more than just a grandmother figure to Willow. She was Granny Evie, a beacon of warmth and unconditional love. Willow blossomed under her gentle care, loving their time together and happily staying with Granny Evie whenever Sarah left for her part-time work or to visit Daniel. A quiet conversation between Sarah and her mother one afternoon solidified a shared hope. They would bring Daniel home. The director of the hospice, relieved to have the space freed up, didn't object, especially since Amelia had long since stopped paying for Daniel's care. And truly, Daniel was no longer the inert, vacant shadow of a man they had brought there 6 months prior to simply waste away. Sarah reached out to her kind-hearted neighbour, Mr. Henderson, and with his help they carefully transported Daniel back to the tranquil haven of the village. That day, Evangeline and Willow had gone to the bustling village fair, their laughter echoing through the small community. When they returned, the scent of cinnamon and warm bread still clinging to their clothes, Sarah took Willow's hand, her heart pounding with a secret, joyous anticipation. "Willow, my sweet sunshine," Sarah murmured, her voice trembling slightly. "Come with me. There's someone I want you to see." She led the small girl into the familiar, yet subtly transformed living room. There, propped up with pillows against the headboard, a sturdy pipe secured above the bed by Mr. Henderson for support, sat Daniel. He was pale, his face bearing the marks of his ordeal, but he was there. When Willow's gaze fell upon her father, a sound of pure, unadulterated joy burst from her lips, a sound Sarah hadn't heard in what felt like an eternity. "Daddy! My daddy!" Willow
launched herself onto the bed, a tiny whirlwind of unleashed emotion. Daniel's eyes, filled with tears, overflowed. Overcoming the lingering pain and stiffness, he reached out, his hand trembling as he stroked his daughter's soft hair, his own voice a raw, husky whisper as he struggled to form the words. "Willow, my life, my sweet girl." And then, to everyone's utter astonishment, a miracle unfolded. As if triggered by the profound emotional release, Willow's voice, long lost to trauma, returned. She began to speak again, freely, joyously. It was the happiest day in their lives since the accident, a true rebirth. Willow, overflowing with newly found words and boundless affection, chattered away incessantly. Her unbridled joy and rapid progress had an incredibly positive effect on Daniel. He redoubled his titanic efforts in his physical and speech therapy. Within a couple of months, he could manage his personal care, transferring from bed to wheelchair and even dressing himself. He could move his arms with remarkable freedom, though sadly his legs remained still. The scars on his face were a constant, stark reminder of the horrific accident, yet they seemed to fade in significance against the light of his recovery. His speech became clear, his thoughts articulate once more. Seeing Sarah's quiet struggle to manage his care alongside her own household duties, Daniel began to ponder his future and theirs. He asked Mr. Henderson, his kind neighbour, to drive him into the city. Choosing a time when Sarah and Willow were out, they slipped away, the familiar hum of the car a strange, comforting sound. The first stop was his old corporate office. When Daniel's former employees and partners caught sight of him, they simply could not believe their eyes. His closest friend and business partner, Stanley, rushed forward, embracing Daniel, tears of sheer joy streaming down his face. Stanley had believed him dead. It turned out that Amelia had informed everyone that after the accident, Daniel had completely lost his mind and had passed away in some obscure medical facility. She hadn't even bothered to inquire about his condition, not even occasionally. His wife had buried him alive, weaving a cruel fiction that his friends had tragically accepted as truth. That was why Daniel's appearance, even in his wheelchair, brought such an outpouring of relief and elation to everyone in the office. They were just beginning to grasp the full extent of Amelia's cold-hearted deception. Stanley, of course, had never expected to see his friend again, and he immediately assured Daniel that all the profits accumulated during his absence as co-owner had been meticulously deposited into his personal account. Money, however, was not Daniel's primary concern. He wanted to know about his wife, about Amelia. Since she had shown no interest in his business affairs, she had never once appeared at the firm. For a short time, Stanley had continued to transfer Daniel's salary to her, but then she had simply vanished without a trace, no longer making contact. Amelia, it seemed, had become entangled with a young foreign man and had moved abroad to live. Nicole's surprise, then, was nothing short of seismic when she opened the front door of what she considered her house to find her son-in-law, a man she believed to be long dead, sitting upright in a wheelchair. The shock stole her breath, and her blood pressure soared. Stammering with a terror she rarely showed, she began to question him about his well-being. Daniel did not prolong the conversation. His voice, now steady and clear, held an unwavering authority. He gave her exactly 1 day to gather all her belongings and vacate his home. Nicole
humiliated and reeling, didn't know where to turn. But understanding the dire consequences if she resisted, she quickly and quietly departed Daniel's stately residence. As he returned to the village, Daniel asked Mr. Henderson to keep his city trip a secret for now. On the way home, they picked up a celebratory cake, a bouquet of cheerful flowers, and a stack of small, carefully chosen gifts. With the unwavering support of his best friend Stanley, Daniel secretly enlisted him to oversee extensive renovations at his grand city house, keeping it a surprise from Sarah and Willow. An experienced team of builders worked tirelessly for a month, performing a comprehensive renovation. They systematically removed all the tasteless, superficial decor that his former mother-in-law had inflicted upon the home, restoring its inherent elegance and warmth. Throughout his network of friends, Daniel reconnected with his former household staff, the cook, the gardener, the housekeeper, and warmly invited them back to work, their loyalty unwavering. He also hired a reputable security firm to ensure no unwelcome guests ever set foot on the estate again. In parallel, Stanley dedicated himself to finding the best rehabilitation clinic that would take on Daniel's complex case, a place that specialized in cutting-edge recovery. Finally, a year and a half after the tragic accident, Daniel, Sarah, and Willow were able to return home, to their true home, together. One evening, Daniel asked everyone to gather in the bright, newly refreshed kitchen. Evangeline and Sarah exchanged puzzled, wondering glances. They had no idea what Daniel wished to speak with them about. With a voice that trembled, not from weakness, but from the sheer weight of emotion, Daniel began. "My dearest Evangeline." Evangeline was pleasantly startled by such a formal yet heartfelt address. "Daniel, my boy, what are you saying?" she asked, a gentle blush rising to her cheeks. "I'm so incredibly nervous," Daniel continued, his gaze unwavering. "Please don't interrupt me." He paused, taking a slow, steady breath. "You have done so much for me. You spent countless sleepless nights. You poured your time and strength into me. You have become a mother to me." His voice cracked slightly with emotion. "All this time you've cared for both me and my daughter, Willow. I am so profoundly grateful. Perhaps this will seem bold, even presumptuous, coming from me in my current state. But I want to ask you for your daughter's hand in marriage. I want to ask for Sarah's hand." Evangeline's eyes softened, brimming with affection. "Daniel, my dear, you and Sarah are like my own children to me. I see the love you share, how you care for each other. But my opinion is this matter is not what truly counts. I will honour my daughter's decision. Whatever she wishes, that is what will be." Her answer was sincere, reflecting the deep trust she placed in Sarah. Then Daniel turned his gaze to Sarah, whose own eyes were shimmering with unshed tears. "Sarah, please forgive me for waiting so many years to truly confess my feelings for you. I was afraid to lose you, but at the same time, I was terrified to say how much I loved you. Now, I am grateful for the cruel twist of fate that brought us to these trials, because through it all, you were right here beside me. You became a mother to my daughter, a beacon of light in her darkness." His voice grew softer, filled with earnest hope. "And now, I am asking you, Sarah, please, become my wife." Sarah stood, her hand pressed over her mouth, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks. Willow, sensing the profound emotion, instinctively moved to Sarah, wrapping her small arms around the nanny's waist. Sarah?
Willow whispered gently, her voice still a little tentative but clear.
Say yes. My daddy is good. You love him too, don't you?
At Willow's words, a soft, choked laugh escaped Sarah, mingling with her tears. She truly loved Daniel with every fibre of her being, and had always longed to be by his side. But could she truly believe that his love for her was genuine, not simply born of circumstance and gratitude? Sarah hesitated, the weight of her feelings making it hard to form an answer. Sensing her inner struggle, Daniel pressed on, his voice full of understanding. I know my circumstances are drastically different now. Perhaps I may never walk again, never fully return to the life I once knew. You are a young, beautiful woman, Sarah. You have your whole life ahead of you. Why would you want a broken man like me, a man in a wheelchair?
No, Daniel, don't ever speak that way, Sarah cried, her voice firm, conviction overriding her tears. I need you exactly as you are. When you're by my side, I have no worries. You are a real man, Daniel. You are strong, and you will walk again. For true happiness, money isn't what matters. I don't need anything, Daniel, only for you and Willow to be here, by my side. I love you too. Yes, I will marry you.
Evangeline watched the heartfelt exchange with a serene smile, pulling Willow closer, a deep sense of satisfaction warming her soul at her daughter's profound happiness. This seasoned woman, who had seen much of life's joys and sorrows, knew with absolute certainty what true family happiness depended upon. Hearing Sarah's affirmative answer, Daniel pushed against the arms of his wheelchair, his muscles screaming with effort. He pulled himself up, using the back of a nearby chair for support, his legs trembling but holding. He had worked tirelessly, painstakingly, for this very moment. In front of his astonished loved ones, Daniel reached into his pocket and, with a triumphant grin stretching across his face, held out a small gleaming ring. Sarah, tears of joy blurring her vision, took the ring and slid it onto her finger.
Sit down, darling. You shouldn't stand too long, Sarah murmured tenderly, pressing herself against Daniel's chest, her arms wrapping around him.
For you and Willow, Daniel declared, his voice strong and resolute, I will continue to fight. One day I will stand on my own 2 feet and toss this wheelchair aside.
We don't doubt it, Sarah affirmed, her eyes sparkling. Do we, Willow? I love you both so much, Willow exclaimed, embracing both her new-found parents with a fierce, innocent hug. Her childish, guileless voice continued, her thoughts simply spilling out. Daddy, Mummy, Sarah, are we going to live here with Granny Evangeline? Sarah and Evangeline exchanged slightly flustered glances, unprepared for the question, but Daniel, having anticipated this very topic, was ready. I have a surprise for all of you. Tomorrow, Mr. Henderson will drive us into the city. I want to show you something very special. What, Daddy? Tell me now! Willow bounced with excitement. That's not fair. I won't be able to sleep. Indeed. What have you cooked up now, Daniel? Sarah asked, a playful challenge in her voice. Patience, my dearest girls, patience, Daniel said, his eyes twinkling. Evangeline, you'll be coming with us too. This surprise involves all of you. The intriguing announcement left no one in peace. Each heart spun its own version of the impending surprise. Willow imagined mountains of gifts or a room full of new toys. Evangeline pondered what her future son-in-law, a man of such quiet resilience, might be capable of, and Sarah, in the quiet depths of her subconscious, knew this was no ordinary trip. But what exactly her beloved had planned, she couldn't begin to guess. The next day, anticipation hummed in the air. Mr. Henderson gently helped Daniel into the car, then settled Sarah and Willow in the back seat. The old faithful sedan, a sturdy American classic, rumbled to life and slowly pulled away. After a couple of hours, they entered the city. Finally, the old faithful sedan slowed to a stop. Willow, peering out of the window, gasped as her eyes fell upon the grand house. "Daddy, it's our house!" she cried, a spark of recognition lighting up her face. "Sarah, remember how we used to play on that big green lawn right there?" she asked, turning excitedly to the nanny. "Of course, sweet pea, I remember," Sarah replied, a wave of warmth washing over her as memories of those happier days flooded back. Just then the front door swung open, and Mrs. Gable, their beloved former housekeeper, stepped out. Tears streamed down her face as she hurried toward them, her arms outstretched. "At last, Mr. Callahan! Sarah, little Willow, hello! Welcome home! We've been waiting for you." Mr. Peterson, the gardener, a gentle elderly man with calloused hands, set down his pruning shears and rushed to greet them. Everyone wept tears of pure joy, embracing each other, a family reunited not by blood alone, but by profound love and shared hardship. The house, with its original elegant layout and fundamental decorative details, remained unchanged in its essence. The renovation team had thoughtfully repapered the walls in soft, inviting tones and installed a few subtle ramps inside the home, allowing David to move freely and effortlessly in his wheelchair across the entire first floor. Willow's room had been transformed into a vibrant sanctuary, adorned with bright, cheerful wallpaper and lovely flowing curtains. Her bed was piled high with a collection of soft dolls and whimsical toys waiting to be played with. The master bedroom for Daniel and Sarah had been thoughtfully situated on the first floor, ensuring comfort and accessibility. Everything had been done with impeccable taste, devoid of any unnecessary extravagance. A couple of days later, Daniel orchestrated the move of his entire new family to their beautiful, now truly their home. His attorney meticulously settled all matters concerning his past marriage, ensuring Amelia was left with nothing but her own emptiness. Daniel and Sarah submitted their marriage license application, and in just a few days after that, they officially became husband and wife. After a modest, heartfelt wedding celebration, Daniel returned to his work at the firm. Though he often felt a deep weariness from the relentless effort of his recovery and the demands of his responsibilities, he never allowed anyone to see his vulnerability. Only Sarah, with her loving gaze, truly knew the immense strength it took for him to navigate life from his wheelchair. 6 months later, Daniel found a clinic in the capital city that specialized in advanced spinal recovery. There, he underwent a second complex surgery. His rehabilitation was arduous, spanning several months, but the unwavering effort he poured into his body yielded extraordinary results. Now he could walk with the aid of a cane. This persistent dedication to his physical healing eventually paid off beyond all expectations. In time, Daniel moved freely on his own 2 feet, without any assistance at all. Physically, he couldn't lift heavy objects or play a vigorous game of soccer, but nonetheless it was a profound, miraculous healing. A little more time passed. Sarah was now 5 months pregnant, her belly gracefully rounded with new life. One relaxed weekend afternoon, The family was all at home, simply enjoying each other's company. Suddenly, the chime of the intercom cut through the peaceful quiet. Sarah walked to the video screen and pressed the button. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice calm. "It's Amelia. Amelia Callahan, the mistress of the house." A familiar, sharp voice crackled through the speaker. "My dear," Daniel said, placing a gentle kiss on Sarah's forehead. "Stay inside. I'll speak with her." He stepped outside and opened the ornate gate. Standing before him was Amelia. She gasped, her eyes widening in stunned disbelief as she saw her former husband, standing tall and strong, clearly in excellent physical condition, on his own 2 feet. "What, Amelia? Didn't expect to see me? Did you think I'd simply wither away in that hospice where you abandoned me?" Daniel's voice was calm, yet it held the weight of profound truth. "Forgive me, darling," Amelia whispered, her voice pitiful and thin, completely devoid of its former haughtiness. "I was so afraid. I couldn't bear to see you suffer. What else was I supposed to do?" "You know what, Amelia?" Daniel replied, a quiet strength in his tone. "I'm actually grateful for what you did. I had profound doubts when I married you. At that moment, I was thinking mostly of my daughter, of giving her a mother. It turns out her new real mother was always right here beside her, all along." "What are you talking about? Lily died!" Amelia shrieked, bewildered. "Yes, Lily is gone," Daniel agreed, his gaze softening as he looked past Amelia to where Sarah was now standing by the gate, Willow's small hand clutching her pregnant belly. "But Sarah was always here, beside us. She never abandoned us." As Amelia's eyes fell upon the visibly pregnant Sarah, and then to her stepdaughter, a cold wave of contempt mingled with a bitter envy twisted her features. The final, crushing blow came as Willow's innocent, joyful voice carried clearly from the sprawling estate. "Daddy, Mummy, Sarah, come here. Granny Evie and I knitted booties for my baby brother." Hearing those words, Amelia finally understood. She had long since become utterly superfluous in this home, and for her there was truly no turning back. Taking the path of least resistance, they falsely hope to find happiness without what they perceive as a burden, the sorrow, hardship, and privation that their true kin endure do not touch their hardened hearts. But the reckoning for betrayal always arrives, unexpected and inevitable. You cannot sow the wind and reap a calm. The wind you sow will, without fail, transform into a storm that will engulf you. Betraying once, you will, sooner or later, find yourself utterly alone, while those who remain faithful to their life's partner through all trials will understand what true strength means in every sense.